Okay, so let's get your farm income calculator set up. This calculator is a Google Sheet, so you will need a free Gmail account in order to access it. Also, before you start to work with your farm income calculator, close all other open Gmail accounts, meaning log completely out of any other Gmail account before you start this process. Now that we've got that taken care of, open up the email that has been shared with you that says Farm Income Calculator, and you just click on the open button. Once you've done that, it will take you over to the Farm Income Calculator, and all of the shaded areas that you are going to see are protected. That means you cannot edit those. So if you try, you will get a notice that says you are trying to edit a protected cell or object. Please contact the spreadsheet owner to remove protection if you need to edit. So you won't be able to edit any of these shaded fields throughout the workbook. Now, if you'll notice along the bottom, there are several tabs. You are looking at the retail tab. There's a wholesale tab, cash crop number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And the reason we have 10 cash crops is so that your farm is diversified. Dr. Booker T. Watley was an advocate of the small farmer when he was living, and he encourages all small farmers to have at least 10 cash crops so that their farm income is more secure and not dependent on just one cash crop. So that's why we have 10 cash crop tabs along the bottom. And each tab will have those shaded areas that we saw on the first tab. And those shaded areas are just an indication that you do not need to change or attempt to edit anything in them. Okay, let's go back to the retail tab. Now at the top, you'll see monthly farm income goal. This spreadsheet was designed to help you replace your current income with farm income, one cash crop at a time. And that's going to take time. However, without some sort of a structure or a mechanism to be able to plan, it's kind of difficult to do. So this calculator is designed to be that assistant for you. As you can see, I've got $10,000 in for my monthly farm income goal. And looking on the left-hand side of the spreadsheet, you'll see the cash crops listed 1 through 10. You can edit anything that's not shaded in. So if I wanted to change cash crop number 1 to my first cash crop of rabbit fertilizer, I can easily do that by just typing over it. And the quantity column is what quantities is that cash crop being marketed in. So in the case of my rabbit fertilizer, I'm marketing it by the pound. Now for cash crop number 2 for me, it's going to be soap. And in that case, I'm going to be selling that by the ounce. So that's what the quantity column is about. The retail column is going to tell me how much I need to retail each of those things for in order to hit my target monthly farm income goal. It's going to tell me in each of these columns how many units I need to sell in order to do that. Now let's talk about each of the columns with the percentages. So as you can see, there's 100%, 50, 33, 25, 20 on down to 10. Each column reflects the percentage that that particular cash crop is contributing to the goal. So in this column, what we have is 100%, which means that the rabbit fertilizer is contributing 100%, or cash crop number 1 is contributing 100% to my goal. There's nothing else. There's just it, right? And as I add cash crops, then it will automatically divide up and, allocate percentages. So once I get my second cash crop, now the burden is not on my rabbit fertilizer to hit the goal by itself. Now I've got the second cash crop, so they're dividing the responsibilities 50-50. When I get the third cash crop, it's going to be divided into thirds. Those 3 cash crops each are going to be responsible for contributing 33%. And so it's going to give me the number of units that I need to be able to produce in order for those cash crops to do their part. As we move down to 25%, same thing. Now that I have 4 cash crops, each of them are responsible for contributing 25% to my monthly farm income goal, and 5 cash crops, 6 cash crops, 7 cash crops, 8, 9, and then ultimately, when I have my 10 cash crops, each of them will only be responsible for contributing 10% to my monthly farm income goal. So that's how that works. Now, as we go down further, you'll see total units. And the total units will automatically add that. There's an auto calculation. You don't have to worry about that. But those total units are reflecting how many total units of all of the different cash crops that you will need to produce. And the reason that we calculate that down at the bottom is so that you know what size your customer database needs to be, because your customer database will dictate how many units you will likely be able to sell based on the law of numbers. So 1 out of every 5 things is going to happen. So once you know the total number of units that you need to produce, then it's easy to determine how many customers you need in your database, because 1 out of every 5 is the same thing as 20%. So once your numbers start to flow in, this customer database number will tell you, okay, you need to sell X number of units, and that means you need X number of people in your database. All of that will self-calculate for you, and we'll see that happen in a future video. Let's go look at the wholesale tab. It's very similar to the retail tab. However, if you're going to be doing wholesaling, you are going to have a different set of numbers as far as number of units that you need to produce in order to be able to hit your monthly farm income goal. So we created a separate tab for that purpose, but everything else is the same. Just remember, everything that's shaded is going to be something that you should not try to edit. You'll get an error message. However, if it's not shaded, you can definitely edit it. Let's look at cash crop number 1's tab. And at the top, you can see again, we've got some shaded areas that cannot be edited. And we also have some areas that can be edited, namely retail markup. You determine how much of a retail markup you want when it comes to your difference in your wholesale pricing and your retail pricing. Likewise, plant units, fungi units, livestock units, and value-added units. That's something you can also edit. Now, this number, the number of units, is going to be determined by how much you can produce based on your supply order and all of those things. So we're going to talk about your expenses next. But by default, we're always going to want to keep a number 1 in each of these units, just so that the calculations that they're associated with don't go crazy. So you'll always see a number 1 in each of these, and you'll probably want to keep them that way as you use the spreadsheet. Now let's look at your expenses. There are 10 line items for expenses, and the expenses have been broken down into 4 different categories. If you're selling plants or flowers, anything that's a plant, it's going to go in this category. If you're selling mushrooms, that goes in the fungi category. If you're selling livestock, be that beef or chicken or pig or goats, that goes in that category. And if you're doing value-added products like soap and fertilizer and things like that, it goes in the value-added category. Now, there are, like I said, 10 line items for each. But if you need more room, feel free to right-click and insert a row above. And by doing that, you don't have to worry about anything as far as the calculations are concerned, because it will automatically add that added row to your calculation, okay? And if you don't need those extras, that's fine. You can just delete. But I did want to show you how that you could easily insert a row and not impact the formula at all. Now, when it comes to the expenses, let's look at those a little bit more closely. So you have supplies and then you have equipment. So an example of a supply would be seeds, fertilizer. For the plants, it would be seeds, fertilizer, maybe an all-natural pesticide. Those would all be supplies for the plant category. Examples. Now, when it comes to equipment examples for the plant category, it would be things like seed trays, any of the tools that you're going to be using, and irrigation equipment, things like that would fall into the equipment category. Every category also has a labor section so that you can keep up with how much time it's going to cost or take, rather, for you to be able to produce the batch or the whatever it is that you're producing. And then it also gives you an opportunity to edit your hourly rate. Now, the hourly rate is what you want it to be and what you would probably pay someone else to do it if you weren't the one doing it. So keep in mind that you might be getting paid $120 an hour on your job. However, it's not likely that you would pay $120 an hour for someone to grow your plants for you. So keep that in mind when you're determining your hourly rate. And also make sure you keep up with the number of hours it's taking you. And it's not like you're going to work start to finish, but you want to keep in mind and keep a record of how much time in total you're spending from germination to harvest and selling. So kind of figure that out and come up with a number and then put that there along with an hourly rate. The profit margin is something that you can also edit. I typically recommend that everyone get no less than a 35% profit margin on anything that they're doing. And that's something that you can change if you'd like. Let's go up and look at the other categories. Fungi. Examples of supplies for fungi would be obviously your spawn, your substrate, maybe whatever you're going to be growing it in, bags, things like that. Equipment would be maybe scales, shelving, things of that nature. So that's how you kind of figure out what's a supply and what's an equipment. Livestock, obviously the supply would be the animal itself, and the equipment would be, and feed and medicine and all of those things. And equipment would be, the fencing and gates and water trowels and things like that. So those are the difference. That's the difference between supplies and equipment and how you should use this calculator. And then with the value added products, let's use soap as an example. Some of the supplies would be lye, essential oils, rubbing alcohol, and then equipment would be things like molds, scales, utensils. I'm trying to think. You get the idea, right? So that's how you break down. And since I don't know what exactly you're going to be growing or raising, I've made this calculator with that in mind. So you pick one of these per cash crop. So you don't want to have more than just one of these columns or these sections per tab. So for cash crop number 1, it's either going to be plant, fungi, livestock, or value add. And then if you have something else you want to add, you need to go to a second tab for cash crop and put that on cash crop number 2, and so on and so forth. Okay, well, that does it for the overview of the farm income calculator. In our next video, we are going to start using it and to show you all how it works. All right, great. Thanks for hanging out. Talk to you on the next video. Peace.